Well, Brian, there haven't been a lot of new transfers into the program since our last analysis video, but Kyrie Mans from Maine transfers in,
Yep.
and Shiloh Sanders as well. How many times do we speculate? Okay, when is Shiloh going to announce that he's going to be a Buff?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, really, since Dion got hired, it was like, all right, well, when's he going to do that? He had to obviously graduate first, but even after the graduation, it was like, all right, when are you going to do this here? And we were obviously just waiting on a really highly entertaining and quality production by John Snelson to get that done. So shout out to John Snelson. That was a great video.
Yeah, it's funny, went to the dog park the day after that happened, and now I get like residual comments on Coach Prime and everything that's going on here at the University of Colorado. This lady yells nepotism out at me. I'm like, okay, deep breath. Shiloh Sanders went to South Carolina initially, made some big plays as an underclassman, went to Jackson State, was one of the best players in the conference, kind of like Jeremiah Brown did and Tyler Brown did.
Yeah.
And they made the same move here to Colorado. So nepotism to me comes in when the guy that's in a playing position isn't as good as the backup and there's nepotism involved.
Yeah.
Shiloh Sanders is a big addition for this Colorado secondary and is going to battle for that one of those starting jobs on the back end of that secondary.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we knew he was going to commit, but I mean, before he was here, I would have penciled in Trevor Woods and Cameron Silman Craig as those two safeties. But now you look at it and it's like, Shiloh could very well take one of those spots, and I think it's going to be great competition for safety. And I think, I do think if Shiloh Sanders is starting, it's not because he's Deion Sanders' son. It's because he's earned that starting spot. I mean, I do think that Charles Kelly will put the best players on the field, and if Shiloh beats out Trevor or Silman Craig, it's because he earned it. And a lot of fans might still say, well, he's playing because he's Deion's son, but I think that we'll see when he gets out there. He's a pretty good player. To your point, he made plays. He played a lot at South Carolina. Deion was not on that staff, and so he earned that playing time because of the type of player he is.
Well, if you just looked up his stats from last year, you'd say, well, he's not that big of an impact player. Well, it's actually pretty miraculous that he was even on the field because he suffered a torn ACL that prior spring. So he got back on the field quicker than most guys would. But it's funny, just covering the Coach Prime Buffs, I see why that Sanders family has learned how to kind of shut out the criticism because everybody's got an opinion when it comes to the Sanders, it feels like.
Yeah, everybody. And, and they kind of bring it on themselves in some ways in that, every one of them has their own YouTube channel and they put everything out there. And I'm not criticizing them, but I think it's a remarkable thing that they're able to do that and shut it out, and they don't care, and they're just them. And I think that's what makes them so fascinating is that every member of the family, they just enjoy, they just appear to enjoy
life in general,
and not only being Sanders but just life. I mean, they sometimes I scroll through a little bit when they're getting haircuts, things like that, but I'll admit that. But like they enjoy, they clearly have fun, and it's clearly a close family. Deion and his kids, and they're enjoying all being here together. And so I think it's a fun dynamic, and I give them a lot of credit because it's hard to sometimes put that criticism aside and not listen to it because you and I get some of it, not nearly to that level, but sometimes you get a comment or two that might eat at you for a minute and you're like, wait a minute, I can't worry about that. But for them to have that ability to do that, I think is huge. And they're just going to go out and they just want to win and they want to play football and win.
That front seven on defense has got a couple guys in Shane Cokes and Jordan Dominic where you go, okay, I really think these are going to be top level Pac-12 players this year. There's a lot of guys in that group. You go, I see why Colorado brought them in as a transfer, but there's a question mark there. Kyrie Mans comes in from Maine. He's got a long reach, and he made plays at that level. It looks like a guy you'd want to add to that mix to battle for a rotational spot. He brings some versatility with him as well, which we've seen kind of being a theme with a lot of the edge guys that they bring in. But it's hard to know exactly who else is going to step up in that group. I guess Vonta Bentley, if you look at the front seven as well. But there's so many question marks in terms of how that depth is going to shake out.
Yeah, and I would sort of put DeMoy Kennedy in there as well, in that, an Alabama guy that didn't play a ton at Alabama, but they love his speed. Sounds like he's going to be the fastest linebacker out there. But yeah, there's a ton of question marks and guys that you look at and say, all right, they didn't play a whole lot at this school, or they came from a group of 5 school or an FCS school. But what I like about the group is that, and Kyrie Mann said the same thing to me, is like, there's a ton of hungry guys here that want to prove themselves. And while they may not have been at that level or played a ton of Power 5 football, when you have a collection of people that are trying to prove themselves, not only to each other, but, to everybody else, I think that's going to bring out a lot of competition. And one thing I like about all these guys that I've talked to that are coming in now is they've had a chance to see the videos. They've had a chance to, from afar, watch spring, see how tough it is. They've had a chance to listen to players that left the program and got pushed out or whatever it was, and they still want to join it. It's because they're excited about the competition and competing and putting themselves up there. And they know, at least the guys I've talked to, they know they're not guaranteed a spot, but they're excited to compete for it. And I think when you get that atmosphere around an entire team, I think that can be huge.
The bulk of the team is now here. Yeah. They were arriving over Memorial Day weekend. We've both done this job too long to get too deep into the weeds in terms of strength and conditioning over the summer and how that's going to play out, because every year it's the greatest thing. In some years, like 2016 here, it worked out really well. In other years, sometimes it didn't. So the proof is always in the pudding there. But those videos are great from the standpoint that you can really tell who's standing out from an eyeball test standpoint. Cavossier Smoke looks like a linebacker coming in at running back. Javon Antonio at receiver, he's actually a few pounds heavier than Seydou Traore was as a tight end this spring at Colorado. So he's a guy that he comes in from Northwestern State, was at the JUCO level previously, kind of like some of the front 7 guys we were talking about, but you love his frame and some of the things he brings there. Is there anything that's kind of stood out to you as you've heard things happening here the last couple weeks?
Yeah, really just kind of those things and just seeing the work. And I love watching the interactions between the guys. I mean, they clearly they're capturing everything on video. They clearly are enjoying the work. I mean, Jimmy Horn Jr. Has stood out to me sometimes in some of these videos. Like he's a little more ripped upper body than I thought he was going to be. So I think a lot of these guys are really seem to be enjoying and embracing the work and enjoying the camaraderie. One of my biggest questions with this team is, how do you get a collection of newcomers to come together, this many newcomers? And a lot of them have told me, hey, I think we're going to bond over all this competition and everything. I think they're bonding over the work that they're doing right now, because it seems like they've got a good rapport with each other when you're watching these videos.
All right, now you are starting to become a Boulder food connoisseur here. We were ragging on you for a long time because you weren't trying a lot of the local spots, but I think you've hit the main ones now. You've gone to the Sink at least once, the Dark Horse a couple times, Pasta J's now a few times. You've been to the Buff, been to a Village Coffee Shop. Out of all those experiences, what's number one on your recommendation list as far as Boulder food right now?
Yeah, and I will say I'm a longtime Colorado resident. I'm born and raised here, but the reason why I haven't done it is because I just – I don't live in Boulder, and so it's a lot of come here for work and then leave, and so I have to.
You've had to defend yourself so many times. I want to give you a clap. You put in the effort this off season, and I'm proud of you.
I appreciate it. For those that hadn't seen it, though, I wanted to defend myself one more time. But another one that I went to last week was Lindsay's Deli. I don't know if you've been there. I looked it up. It said best deli in Boulder. It was a great sandwich, so I recommend that one. But I think for me, the Buff was a pretty darn good breakfast. I'd have to go that, and the Dark Horse burger, I've had that now a couple times. That's a pretty good burger, and so I might go with those two.
It's kind of like your children. You don't want to name a favorite. Every time I want to say that the Buff is my favorite breakfast restaurant, I'll go somewhere and try to get a traditional breakfast like you can get at Village Coffee Shop, and it stinks wherever you order it. And it's like, okay, Village Coffee Shop on that level, I mean, they're the best from a basic breakfast standpoint, in my opinion. Yeah, but sure. the Buff, just from a overall atmosphere and the skillets they have there and the pancake, I mean, it's hard to beat the Buff.
Yeah, for a good quality budget friendly breakfast, Village, I mean that's pretty good.
You actually met Jack Bailey at Pasta J's recently. How much does an offensive lineman order when he goes to Pasta J's?
He just got one of the thin crust pizzas. And actually didn't eat it all. Took it home in a box. So I did as well. But it was funny because I asked him, I said, well, where do you want to go? What type of food do you want? And he said, I love Italian. I was like, well, I know where to take you. And so we went to Pasta J's and yeah. So he was pretty subdued in how much he ate. I mean, half of a pizza. So, but he was excited. He loved it. He thought Pasta J's was great.
Pasta J's is the most polarizing of all those places, and I think it's because if you don't like garlic, you're gonna hate Pasta J's. Because but I love garlic, so I love Pasta J's as a result.
Yeah, and I told Jack, I said, well, that's kind of the thing is that people say you better love garlic if you want to go to Pasta J's. He goes, I love garlic.
There you go.
And he was actually telling me that he's trying to, he likes to experiment with cooking, and he's trying to come up with a really good, marinara sauce and everything. I said, well, you got to get with Coach Sal and figure that out because that guy's Italian, and so he might have some sauce ideas for you.
And that segues us into our lunch today. Sal Sanzare mentioned a pizza joint here in Boulder, so I'm going to trust him. Yeah. We're going to try that. You have been to Audrey Jane, I believe, in Boulder, and have recommended that, so we got to hit that. And Il Pastaio for Italian. I'm going to take you there at some point. So each one of these analysis videos will try to work around lunch, and by the end of next year, you're going to have a whole ranking system for Boulder restaurants.
I'm hoping to have it by fall camp.
Okay, all right.
maybe next year.
All right, let's go get some pizza, okay?
Sounds good.
All right.